In the year 1288, the most powerful empire the world had ever known, the Mongol Empire, marched south once again. They had crushed Persia, Russia, and China. Entire civilizations had burned beneath their hooves. But here, on a quiet river in the east, they would burn instead. This was Dai Viet, a land of rivers and forests, a nation of warriors, poets, and farmers who refused to kneel. At its heart stood General Tran Hung Dao, a man whose mind was sharper than any sword. Calm, patient, unyielding, the strategist who had faced the Mongols twice before and survived to learn their every weakness. Beside him, King Chern Yentong, wise beyond his years, leading not through fear but through faith. And guiding them both, the retired Emperor Chern Tangtung, whose wisdom anchored the heart of the nation. Against them came the storm, Prince Togon, son of Kublai Khan, proud and merciless, commanding 60,000 men. Alongside him, the feared Admiral O Man Yi, whose warships ruled the southern seas like steel dragons. The world held its breath, for the empire that had conquered half the world was about to collide with a kingdom that refused to die. And on the calm waters of the Bach Dang River, that empire would burn. This is the story of the Battle of Bach Dang, when 60,000 Mongols burned.
Is the story of the Battle of Bach Dang, when 60,000 Mongols burned.
How could an empire that conquered half the world burn on a single river? In the spring of 1288, the Mongol Empire, once feared from Persia to Japan, met its match in a small land called Dai Viet. The river you see now, the Bach Dang, once calm and silent, had turned into a sea of flames. 60,000 Mongol soldiers, trapped, burning amidst their own pride and iron ships. Smoke swallowed the sky. The screams of warriors echoed across the mangroves. Beneath those waters, sharp wooden stakes pierced the hulls, hidden fangs of a patient nation. But this wasn't chance. It was intellect. It was vengeance. Behind this inferno stood one mind, General Tran Hung Dao, the man who turned the tides of Asia. That day, fire devoured not just ships, but the arrogance of an empire. This was Bach Dang, the battle that changed the fate of a continent. Once, there was an empire so vast, the sun could never set on its borders. It was born from the cold winds of the steppes, where the cries of horses became the rhythm of conquest. The Mongol Empire. They crossed deserts, oceans, and mountains, devouring kingdoms that once believed themselves invincible. In the east, they became emperors of China. In the west, they broke the walls of Baghdad. And at their throne sat one man, Kublai Khan, the grandson of Genghis Khan. A ruler not only of warriors, but of the largest empire the world had ever known. But for Kublai, victory was never enough. To the south lay a small land, Dai Viet, a stubborn kingdom that had resisted him twice. He sent his son, Prince Togon, to end that defiance forever. Alongside him, the sea wolf of the empire, Admiral O Man Yi, master of the Mongol navy. Their mission was clear, erase Dai Viet from the map. But as history would soon remember, even the greatest empire on earth can be undone by a single spark. In the shadow of an empire that conquered half the world stood a small land that refused to bow, Dai Viet. A kingdom born from rivers and forests, where the sound of drums was the heartbeat of its people. At its heart was a king of compassion, Chern Yentong, a ruler who led not by fear but by faith. Beside him, the elder emperor Trun Tung Tung, whose wisdom steadied the nation like the roots of an ancient tree. And at the center of it all, a man the Mongols had learned to fear, Tran Hung Dao, the general who had twice faced the greatest army on earth and survived. His philosophy was simple: use stillness to defeat movement. When the empire advanced like fire, he turned his homeland into silence, an empty field, a vanished village, a fortress built not from stone, but from will. Across the land, villagers burned their homes and hid their grain. Better ashes, they said, than surrender. Every path, every river, every hill became a weapon. The enemy saw nothing, but in that nothingness lay the strength of Dai Viet. And as the final plan took shape, Tran Hung Dao placed his hand upon the map of the Bach Dang River, where moonlight shimmered upon the calm water, hiding the storm to come. The Mongol army was starving. Their great supply fleet, the very heart of their campaign, had vanished into flames. Hunger crept into their camps. Fear began to whisper among the soldiers. And then came an offer from Dai Viet, a proposal of peace. Tra Hung, they called it, a feigned surrender. Believing victory was close, the Mongols accepted, unaware they had just stepped into the general's design. For while they celebrated, Tran Hung Dao struck, burning what little food remained, cutting their last lines of supply. Every spark was a blade, every fire a warning. Then, under the cover of night, he prepared his masterpiece. Along the muddy bed of the Bach Dang River, soldiers planted sharpened wooden stakes, invisible beneath the rising tide. At dawn, the water would hide them, but when the tide fell, they would rise like the fangs of the earth itself. And as moonlight shimmered upon the still surface, one final piece moved into place, Commander Nguyen Quai leading a small fleet to lure the Mongols into the jaws of destiny. The perfect trap was set. Under a silent sky, 600 Mongol warships entered the Bach Dang River. Their admiral, O Man Yi, believed victory was near. The river seemed calm, the enemy in retreat. From the mist ahead, Nguyen Quai's small fleet appeared, clashing briefly before turning back. To the Mongols, it looked like fear. To Dai Viet, it was the signal. As they charged forward, the tide began to fall. Beneath the darkening water, something waited. Wooden stakes, thousands of them, jagged, silent, hungry. And then, the first crack of disaster. The lead ships struck the hidden spikes. The entire formation collapsed into chaos. In that instant, the horns of Dai Viet roared. Fire ships descended from both banks, loaded with oil and straw. Flaming arrows rained down like stars. The Bach Dang River became a sea of fire. Trapped between tide and flame, the mighty Mongol fleet turned to ashes. On the cliffs, Tran Hung Dao raised his sword high, and the bronze drums thundered. The counterattack began. By dawn, the fire was gone. The river was silent once more. But beneath the smoke floated the wreckage of 600 ships, and the memory of a world empire undone by a single river. When the fire finally died, silence returned to the Bach Dang River. The mighty fleet that once ruled the seas now drifted as blackened ghosts. Amid the wreckage, O Man Yi, the proud admiral of the Mongol navy, was captured alive. His eyes, once burning with arrogance, now stared into the emptiness of defeat. Far to the north, Prince Thuat Huan fled in panic. The prince of the greatest empire on earth, crawling through the forests of Dai Viet, hiding in a copper tube to escape the vengeance of fate. On the banks of the river, Tran Hung Dao stood among his men. He ordered them to gather the fallen banners, to collect the broken weapons, and then he raised his hands to the sky. A great altar was built on the shore. Incense smoke rose with the dawn as he offered thanks to heaven, not for glory, but for peace. And so ended the empire that had conquered half the world. Not by armies, but by wisdom, unity, and the will of a people who refused to yield. From the face of a defeated admiral to the calm waters of the present, the Bach Dang River still remembers. The Bach Dang River, once a battlefield of fire and fury, now rests in peace. Beneath its quiet waters lie the ancient wooden stakes that once tore through the ships of empires. They are not weapons anymore, but roots of memory, reminders of a nation that survived through wisdom. As historian Lê Van Hu once wrote, Dai Viet triumphed not by strength, but by intelligence. Centuries have passed, yet the river still carries that truth. It once burned with death, but gave birth to freedom. On its bank now stands the statue of Tran Hung Dao, the guardian of a nation's spirit, the embodiment of resilience. His gaze, cast toward the sea, reminds us that courage and wisdom outlive every empire. The flame of Bach Dang still burns, not in war, but in the hearts of those who remember. The river once burned with death, but gave birth to freedom.